Gopi Jana Ballabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihari Jashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jayam Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivarajakacharishta Tadasata Shri Srimad Devangar Shri A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki, ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki, Prem Se Gaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopakabina Shyamakunda Radha Kundigri Govardhana Ki, Shri Vrindavan Dhama Ki, Shri Mayapur Dhama Ki, Ganga Maya Ki, Jamuna Maya Ki, Bhakti Devi Ki, Tulasi Devi Ki, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki, Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. Tato Varnas Cha Chatvaras Tesham Brahmana Uttama Brahmaneshvapi Veda Gyo Hyarta Gyo Bhyadikastata Tato Varnascha Chatvardas Tesham Brahmana Uttama Brahmaneshvapi Vedagyo Hyartagyo Bhyadikastata Tato Varnascha Chatvaras Tesham Brahmana Uttama Brahmaneshvapi Vedogyo Hyartagyo Bhyadikastata Tato Varnascha Chatvaras Tesham Brahmana Uttama Brahmaneshvapi Vedogyo Hyartagyo Bhyadikastata Tata, among them. Varna, classes. Cha, and. Chatvada, four. Tesham, of them. Brahmana, a Brahmana. Uttama, best. Brahmaneshu, among the Brahmanas. Api, moreover. Veda, the Vedas. Gya, one who knows. He, certainly. Artha, the purpose. Gya, one who knows. Abhyadika, better. Tata, than him. Translation from text 30. Better than those living entities who can perceive sound are those who can distinguish between one form and another. Better than them are those who have developed upper and lower sets of teeth. And better still are those who have many legs. Better than them are the quadrupeds, and better still are the human beings. Purport. It is said that certain birds, such as crows, can distinguish one form from another. Living entities that have many legs, like the wasp, are better than plants and grasses, which have no legs. Four-legged animals are better than many-legged living entities, and better than the animals is the human being, who has only 2 legs. Text 31. Among human beings, the society which is divided according to quality and work is the best. And in that society, the intelligent men, who are designated as Brahmanas, are the best. Among the Brahmanas, one who has studied the Vedas is the best. And among the Brahmanas who have studied the Vedas, one who knows the actual purport of the Veda is the best. Purport. The system of 4 classifications in human society, according to quality and work, is very scientific. The system of Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras has now become vitiated as the present caste system in India. But it appears that this system has been current a very long time, since it is mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. Unless there is such a division of the social orders in human society, including the intelligent class, the martial class, the mercantile class, and the labor class, there is always confusion as to who is to work for what purpose. A person trained to the stage of understanding the absolute truth is a Brahmana. And when such a Brahmana is Vedagya, he understands the purpose of the Veda. The purpose of the Veda is to understand the absolute. One who understands the absolute in 3 phases, namely Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan, who understands the term Bhagavan to mean the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is considered to be the best of the Brahmanas, or a Vaishnava. So this whole section then, we see that Kapila Muni is describing devotional service, and he's been describing the process of deity worship. But in here, not so much detail is given, some basic concepts of the deity worship. More importantly, he's putting more emphasis on the mentality, the mood. And this mood is that if you're just seeing him as Lord and have that sentiment, that's nice. But still, it's not really very pleasing until you recognize other living entities. When that is accomplished, then we can say that now deity worship actually starts. So even though it's for everyone can take part in the deity worship, it's actually meant for coming to the platform of being able to understand the relationship between the Lord and all living entities. That's the actual point. So now in here he's been making the point about making the distinction between living entities, that someone who is doing this, that's not what's pleasing to him. Then now he's just spent so many verses making very specific designations between the forms of the living entities. So then one might think that this is contradictory. But actually is not. Because just because you see the oneness of all living entities as the spirit soul is transcendental doesn't mean that you can't see the coverings. And you can't tell the specific kinds of coverings. Right? That's very important. Because if you can't make distinction, how are you going to actually engage in relationship? The point is, relationship is based on that affection for the Supreme Lord and his interaction, his affection for the living entities. That's the basis of all relationship. But it's not that you can't distinguish between who's God, who's the living entities, and the variety of living entities and what services they are rendering. So this ability to see things as one and at the same time different, that's our philosophy. So we see it only as one or only as different, then there's always going to be a shortcoming. Right? If we use the thing you're saying, oh, but this situation, no, it's all, we don't make these distinctions. It's not a very developed consciousness. Right? Or if we can only see distinctions but we can't see the oneness, then that's very nice. It's sophisticated, developed in a certain way, but it might also be useless in that it might be critical. So this ability to be able to see both at once, that's actually our philosophy. So here is that one is able to see that the soul is non-different, that they are transcendental living entities. But the particular forms that they're in, so therefore the particular activities and relationships they can have with Godhead and others, that then is different. Right? One has to be able to see this. So, in this consideration then, because we're dealing here on this side of the Viraja, in these verses, that one is understanding that those differences that one is appreciating, those differences that one is seeing, that's not actually the nature of the soul. The soul is the servant of Krishna. So one is able to appreciate that the living entity is acting on, according to, the principle of that they're servant of Krishna, or underlying, very hidden, that they're servant of Krishna. But at the same time as the covering that's there may have something that, we may appreciate or not. So whether we appreciate it or not, still the way of seeing it has to be in relationship to Krishna. What we appreciate, is it appreciated by Krishna? What is appreciated by Krishna? If it's not, what's not appreciated by Krishna? And then that means is what you're working with, but that is not the living entity. Right? It's very important. The living entity is one thing, their conditioned nature is something separate. Right? So if we're going to say we're not this body, we're all equal, so we make no distinction, at the same time then make distinction that this person has done this, so therefore he's a nonsense, that's contradictory. That's totally illogical. Because if you're going to make the distinction, then you make the distinction. If you're not going to make it, don't make it. If we're going to be so transcendental, oh, we're all equal, so it doesn't matter, equal opportunity, everyone gets the same services, everything to do like that, Then at the same time as we shouldn't making distinguishes, other distinguishing factors based on the material platform by which we are already saying we don't make those distinctions. You understand? So that will be very nice as far as, a consistent philosophy goes. But the problem is how you're going to interact with people. You're going to interact with everybody exactly the same. Come up, hello, my dear grasshopper, how are you today? Please send my humble obeisances. Like that. Like that. Want some prasad? Like this. So it's not necessarily going to work. So the living entity is distinguished, but at the same time the conditioned nature is distinguished. So the living entities are dealt with equally, but the conditioned natures are dealt with according to their position. And that position is established by Godhead, no one else. If someone else wants to establish, means in other words, if someone is wanting that they must establish the positions according to their own mental speculation, then that means they are still polluted by the concept that I am God. Because the point is God makes the distinctions. He's made who the living entity. Here, Kapila Muni as God is saying, what are the distinctions in the living entities? Would we know this? Would we know that these living entities, what's superior to another? Right? We wouldn't know. Right? Like Darwinism is so-called so advanced, but here's even a more advanced system based on the consciousness, and then therefore from that, what facilities they have, so you can understand through the consciousness what makes the different things. So this balance is very, very important. This ability to be able to distinguish at the same time to not distinguish is very important, but we have to know what to distinguish and not. Otherwise, we will get it backwards, right? That's the thing. If one's not following the Veda, then irreligion becomes religion, religion becomes irreligion. So we have to be careful, because here then, after saying no distinguishing, then he's just established again now that Varnashram is important. Human society is the top. Of that, Varnashram is important, right? And then goes on within Varnashram, then the Brahmins, and then those who know the purport of the Vedas is higher than that. He'll continue. He will keep going with these designations. So we can see is that he's pointing out that this ability to see with transcendental vision, that all living entities are Krishna's servants, and therefore they are dealt with equally. But at the same time, one has to deal with the consideration of their conditioned nature, right? Therefore, then that brings up what they do, the Varnashram system. So the Varnashram system then establishes, according to nature, what is the important element that everyone brings to the society, right? Everybody's doing something important. That's the superiority of the Vedic system over the modern, is that the Vedic system recognizes that everybody has something important to do. And that is required in the society. Without knowledge and training of others, there will be no society. But unless someone's administering and protecting and creating a safe environment, no one who, even though they're trained and educated, can function. The running of that society is still going to come because of money. So therefore, those who generate the economics is very important. And at the same time, is unless there are those who are dealing with the arts and assisting others in the arts, then nothing's going to happen. Right? Because you're dealing with a huge amount of people. So unless people are assisting and working, then even you have the education, the administration, the economics, still it won't work. Right? Because that's not that many people. It's not enough to make everything else work. So you have to have all these four. Each one is bringing to the social system something extremely important. But as being described here, then of those things, then it moves up by the different elements of the consciousness. One is just performing one's daily activities, assisting, that's nice, but he may be only conscious of himself, though he's taking part, and in this way is extending it. But when we can understand the economic value of something, therefore we can make things grow, we can expand things. Because the society is going to expand, and unless there's an expansion of facilities, how is it going to be accommodated? So that's more important. But that growth and expansion can only take place in a safe environment, so that's more important. And a safe environment can only be established if you actually understand what is the instructions of the Lord. So like this, then there's naturally a development here, but all are important. So these things, if they're understood, then one can actually establish something. But if one is on the mental plane of speculation where he does not actually understand or have faith that the Vedic system, the Varnashram system, is the only actual thing that works, then there will never be, consistency. There'll never be cohesion between the various members of that, organization, or that society. Because it will never be clear who's supposed to do what, right? Just like the Brahmana, he defines how things are supposed to run. What are the standards? What are the methods by which those standards are obtained? Right? So the Kshatriya, then learning this from the Brahmin, he executes it. Right? But the Brahmin never executes it. He doesn't do it. Right? He's giving the directions and advice. But it's not that the Kshatriyas are their representative that, okay, here, I've told you what to do, now you do it. No. The Kshatriya has himself imbibed those teachings, understood those, and from his own determination, he is administrating. So the glory or the, the fame or infamy that come, the responsibility of administration falls squarely on the Kshatriya, not on the Brahmin. But the responsibility to establish the standard, train others in the standard, follow up on that training, cultivate those in that standard, that falls squarely on the Brahmins. Right? Vaishyas, they make money, but not at the expense of the Brahmins and Kshatriyas or Shudras. Right? They make money, they give in charity, they pay their taxes, and whatever's left, then that's up to them to do. No one should complain. Right? They like to work, and that's just like the Brahmin. No one complains if he wants to study more. Right? He has more things, more interests, so no one should complain the Vaishya makes more or uses more, because he's giving more. He makes more, he gives more. He makes less, he gives less. So why should we worry, oh, he's making so much, but he's giving so much. Right? And the Shudra, then, they are assisting the others in their area. They know the arts of the sciences that the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas know, and by the application of the arts, then the system works. So that combination of art and science, then everything functions properly. So all this is very important. If one can't make these distinctions or have faith in this, then one is actually just functioning on the mental platform. Right? That make sense? So these things apply in our life. How do they apply? GBC man's like a Brahmin, a preacher. Right? He has a standard. He knows the standard. He trains the temple presidents in the standard, what is to be done, the vision, understanding what Prabhupada wants, what Lord Chaitanya wants, what the Sampradaya represents. But the management of it falls squarely on the temple president. It's not, GBC is not an administrator. He's a Brahmin. So if this is understood, then the relationship between the GBC and the temple president works very nicely. But if the GBC thinks the temple president just does what I say, just like the Brahmins think that the Kshatriya just does what I say, the system won't work. Or if the Kshatriya, the temple president, thinks, well, what the GBC has to say is not of value, or the Kshatriyas don't think the Brahmin, what they're doing has a value, I know better, then we know better. Then Parasaram comes around, like that, and he shows who's boss, like that. So these are very, very simple, direct things. If one accepts Varnashram, other applications work very well. You have the husband and wife. The husband has the environment, has the standards, has all those different things, but it's the wife who is running the house. Right? And so there's a natural differences in here. So if Varnashram's not accepted, none of these other things are going to work. It's the same principle. Right? If you think, oh yeah, I can add 2 plus 2 and that's fine, but then you can't add 4 and 4, what's wrong? It means you don't understand mathematics. And if you don't accept mathematics as a basis, but at the same time you're going to claim you can do 2 plus 2 equals 4, there's something wrong. So it's speculative. So Kapila Muni is pointing out that it's part of devotional service. Varnashram is part of devotional service. Understanding this principle is part of devotional service. It doesn't stand on its own. So when we say dasyam, then for us as Gaudiyas it does not mean Varnashram. Right? The Shris, the Madhvas, it does mean Varnashram because it's very much integral. Because in Vaikuntha, then that's very prominent. Rules and regulations are prominent. So the following of Varnashram here is simply practice for following it there. But for the Gaudiyas, then, it is part of engaging the conditioned nature in the Lord's service, which is the process. But you're trying to develop love for God. You're not working on the principle of Varnashram is the perfect stage. That doesn't work. So it's a little more subtle. But it is part of devotional service. To think it's not, to think we're beyond that, or think it doesn't apply in this age, is purely speculative. And anyone who says like that is speculating. It's that simple. It's right here. It's not, well, no, but, no, it's no buts. God has said this is the way it works. We either accept God or we don't. Or if we don't accept God, then we'll make up our own religion. Right? And we know Prabhupada wasn't too fond of that. So he's making it very, very clear about the system. But the emphasis is still not on the system. Because he's made that clear. As one who performs the ritual nicely but has missed the mood is not pleasing me. And the mood is to see all living entities as equal and engage them according to their conditioned nature in his service. Right? So, therefore, even though he keeps mentioning this point of the form of devotional service, still the mood of devotional service is actually more important. But without the form, then it doesn't actually come up to the standard. Right? Because he's coming up to human being and then human being going beyond. So that means Vaishnava's automatically human being. So that means Vaishnava follows Varnashram. The only Vaishnava that doesn't is Paramahamsas. Right? But Paramahamsas, they don't get involved here. They're not worried about what goes on here. Right? Plus, Paramahamsa means he's on the liberated platform. So he's absorbed in the Lord's eternal pastimes. That's why he doesn't get involved here, because he's got something better to do. Right? Okay. And so then all this then brings it to the point that the devotees then of the whole system of living is the best, because understanding devotional service, understanding our relationship with the Lord, acting within that relationship, that's the most important thing to gain from the whole material experience. That's actually what we're trying to get to, because that's what goes on in the spiritual world. Yes. Any questions, comments? Yes. Brahminical and Kshatriya, okay. A dual mandate on the GBC. It's become a dual mandate, but see, if one that's the point, is if you spend your time trying to understand Varnashram, then trying to figure out ways that we don't need to follow it, then one can learn the subtleties. Now, Chanakya Pandit, what Varna was he? A Brahmana. Did he ever manage the kingdom? No. But he gave all the advice by which he took a kid off the side of the road and made him into the emperor of North India in 8 years. Right? Why? Because his knowledge or his science that he knew was administration. So it's not that he doesn't do management. He doesn't do administration. So Prabhupada said GBC is the highest managerial authority. It doesn't say it's the highest administrative. You understand? Management means you organize something. You organize to make the phone call, talk to this person, that, but organize it in such a way that everything runs smoothly. Yeah, but administration means you have to get down into the practical aspect of your accounts and this and that and all the different things that are there, so that you see to, protection, this, that, everything that's going on. It's a bit bigger. Administration means protection. Right? Management simply means organizing. Right? That's why if you use modern management systems, they fall short, because they don't include protection. Right? Any of the systems that people talk about, one or two will touch on it, but generally it's for managing businesses to make money. It's not administration. So just because management is there, Kshatriyas aren't managers, they're administrators. Everybody manages. A housewife manages. You think it's magic that the socks, dumped on the floor, by their husband, get into the wash, get folded up and put back in the drawer? That's management. Right? The rickshaw wallet, to keep his rickshaw so it works, that's management. But it's not administration. Administration means you create an environment of protection. So management is not enough. Brahmins also manage. So that was Prabhupada's point, is that he's saying, okay, well, for preachers or sannyasis, we don't manage. No, Prabhupada said you manage. You don't administrate. That's a subtle difference. But that's why if we put our effort into understanding Varnashram instead of, Kavi or someone else, we could gain so much. The subtleties that are here and the different are so clear. But we have to spend the time to find them. If we don't, then we'll go on in a speculative fashion, and whatever we dream up will continue as speculation. It'll never work. It can't work. Why? Because it's God's laws that run this place. So unless you are in line with God's laws, whatever you dream up will never work. And if anything is working, it's simply because by chance it's in line with the law. You know what I'm saying? That's all. So this element of understanding these subtleties, it means it applies everywhere. Why do you think our marriages don't work so well? Because no one can tell the difference between the duties. Right? They can't tell the difference between the duties. So the men are expecting the women to have the particular mentality that is supposed to be there in the men. And so therefore the women want the men to do the activities of the women. And I'm saying they can't tell the difference. So if you can't tell the difference, you won't be able to tell the difference anywhere. So therefore you can't tell the difference between GBC and temple president, or temple president and his community, or the husband and wife, or parent and child. You can't tell the difference. It's the same principle, just different applications, right? Right? The knife that you cut your vegetables with, the same principle is used at the printing press by those big guillotines that cut the paper to size the books. It's the same principle. It's not that, oh, well, that's something. Well, it's the same thing. So if you can't distinguish actually between the duties of a Brahmin and a Kshatriya, you won't be able to tell the difference between any leaders. Right? What is the difference between the secretary and the Kshatriya? Right? People can't tell the difference between an administrator and a manager or a bureaucrat. Right? Because the bureaucrat is a Shudra. That's their Varna. And generally, the Kshatriyas who they take on as that are Dvijas, specifically generally Vaishyas, but Dvijas who are not acting in their position and become secretaries. So the Kayastha class, the Suvarnavana, this class is higher grade persons who are working in Shudra jobs. So that's why they can do it so well. So the Kshatriyas use them. Right? Those who are working lower than that, they're Dvija Bandhus, they're just one of the common people. But these elements are there that you can distinguish what is the conditioned nature so you know exactly how to apply it. That's intelligence, that's discrimination. So if you can't tell the difference, then it becomes yeah, so these are very, very, it's science. And it always works. It doesn't matter what yuga it is, what time it is, nothing. They always apply. Gravity is always working 24/7. Satya Yuga, it was still there, right? Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, breathing, eating, sleeping, mating, defending. What's changed? People wear clothes. People do something with their head, their beards. They pick their noses. Nothing's changed. But we are under this illusion that there's something different about Kali Yuga, which is created by God, just for, as a side comment, and that therefore God's laws don't apply in something he's created. Now, where do you find a philosophy that God's created something he can't control? It's not Vaishnavism. right? That's your Judaic-Christian concept. God's created something he can't control, so someone else has to control it. Who is that person? Satan. Right? And so therefore, then, if we're going to now turn to Satan's idea of how to run this world, what is his business? To make you go to hell. So therefore, then, why would that be used as a paradigm? Why we wouldn't use Varnashram, which is given by God? Just because we don't understand it doesn't mean that we shouldn't have faith in it and try to study it and learn it. Couldn't we have done that in 30 years? 75, Prabhupada was talking very strongly about establishing Varnashram. So that means now it's 34 years. Right? If somebody, it doesn't take that long to become a PhD. You know what I'm saying? So that means we could have people who are very expert at Varnashram now, but instead we're still speculating, does it even apply to us? And if you ask most people, they'll say no. But Kapila Muni right here is saying the opposite. Prabhupada's saying the opposite. Everyone in the Shastra is saying the opposite. How do we come to this speculative concept that it's a maybe? It's a possibility. Right? And the best part is we accept, the brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, sannyas, but we won't accept the varnas. That's because of our conditioning, because we'll turn it into the caste system, but probably the caste system isn't that. Caste system is, this is your nature, that's what you act. It doesn't matter what you're born at. Satyakama Jabala is one of the perfect examples. Satyakama Jabala, he was a son of a prostitute. But because he was so truthful, and he acted on truth, Gautama Rishi accepted him as a Brahmin. He's one of the great personalities, mentioned in the Vedas. Like that. So great self-realized soul. Because he acted as he was accepted as such. Yes, you don't, that means unless you know the science, how you know, unless, it's like this, if you know a few recipes, that's nice, but what if something's not there in the recipe? Or what if there's not, a whisk or something like that you need in the recipe? You're going to have problems. But if you understand the science of cooking, then no matter what situation you're in, what ingredients you have, you can cook something excellent. Right? That's the whole point. So that's why Prabhupada says, Nectar of Devotion, he didn't say the sentiment of devotional service. He said the science. So others try to present the sentiment and bring it out and try to say that it's higher. But the point is if a sentiment is not based on science, it doesn't have any meaning. Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his Chaitanya Sikshamrita, every aspect of Lord Chaitanya's philosophy, including those of Radha Krishna, their pastimes, he establishes back into Upanishads. He quotes Upanishads that are explaining Radha and Krishna's pastimes. And he makes it clear there that if any philosophy is not based on the Vedanta and the Upanishads, it's not accepted by the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. And Rupa Goswami said, Shruti Smriti Puranadi. He said, if it's not based in the scriptures, we don't accept it. But at the same time, as we very calmly play around with speculative elements that borderline on how you say? They say Gnosticism. That they don't accept the Vedas. We don't have anything good to say about Buddhists because they're Gnostics. Right? We even will have more support for the 6 bogus philosophies because they accept that the authority of the scriptures and accept the supreme person. But other than that, then they don't actually get farther. So this whole element of how we could even consider playing around with atheism is very strange. Why? It's just our conditioning. That's what we've done for time immemorial. So that's, Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains in Tattva Vivek that in the spiritual world there's one opinion. It doesn't matter what realm, Vaikuntha, Dwarka, Mathura, there's one opinion about the Jiva, God, and their relationship, that he's the supreme, they're his servant. There's one opinion only. But in the material world, he says, then there are so unlimited opinions. Basically, they fall into 2 categories, that of karma and gyan. Karma means you think that everything's coming from the material energy. So consciousness, life, your pleasures and pains. So if you follow the rules of the material energy nicely, you'll be happy. You don't follow them, you'll be sad. So therefore, be happy, be nice, do those things. So, and if you share, then you'll get more benefit because you're benefiting others, so they'll benefit you. It's a nice, you scratch my back, I scratch yours. So therefore, be nice. But they understand there's some supremacy, but they take it as material energy itself, like that. The jnanis then are those who take it that the soul does not come from the material energy. And the material energy basically is some variety of illusion. And so if you remove this concept that you have of that the material world is actually of value in that, then all your problems will go away, right? Problem is you extinguish your own existence in the process. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur points out, how do you know you're happy if you don't exist? So it's a little bit of a serious flaw in the, impersonalist, Buddhist, pessimistic, or idealism, all these different theories there, Shaivism, that are based on this concept. But technically speaking, your monotheism will say, well, monotheism is separate, but actually it's still part of the same thing. It's a mix, a bit of a mix. So, because karma didn't work, jnana didn't work, then the living entity actually gets frightened because they have to have something. And they know that their happiness comes from a supreme that's inherent in the soul. And by working appropriately with that supreme, you'll get benefit. So then they take up monotheism. But in that, because they can't explain karma really very properly, then they don't accept, they have a problem with him actually being in control of the material world. Let's say he's the supreme controller, but someone else has to be in control. Otherwise, why does bad things happen to good people? Right? And so but if you ask what's the body, what's the soul, it's actually made of material energy. It's mind or it's a body. So actually they're saying the same philosophy as the karmis. And if you ask what's your relationship with Godhead, they'll say this, that, but ultimately God has no form and everything like that. So it comes back to karma. So the generation of where the soul comes from, so that's how you get these pollutions, because you actually think that I, by my observation, can actually understand the material energy and make a plan. Right? But that's what the demons do. Sura means, I made my plan, it didn't work, I turn to God. Asura means, I made my plan, it doesn't work, I make a new plan. Right? How you say. Kavi didn't work, then I move to systems. If that doesn't work, then I move to something else. Like saying like that. No, it's what are the principles on which all these different concepts are based. That's common, they have to be. They're only dealing with the same material energy. Just they emphasize different aspects. Someone emphasizes your position. Someone emphasizes, therefore, your your prospects or your potential, like that, which is the aspect of inspiration, which is coming from Madan Mohan. Right? The field is coming from Balaram. This is the way it is, and this is how it works. But to be inspired in that's attraction. So they'll bring out the aspect of attraction. You can do it. You are rich. This is that. All these different things. Poor dad, rich dad is mentality. You want it, then you attract. Why the Gita says, you think about it long enough, you get attached to it. Only after you're attached, you'll work. So only if you work, you'll get it. So if I focus on attraction, I will work and get it. But you see, what they do is they work on different parts. Or goal-oriented. Yes, you go get it and this and that. So it's there. It's only working on Gopinath, on the Prayojana. It's not emphasizing the others. Because if that's there, it means you had to understand the field. You had to know what you're doing. And therefore, you'll work. But in it, if your field understanding was wrong, your work will still not get you the thing. So the complete picture is there in the Vaishnava philosophy. So to think that these others, they are observant people, intelligent people, they've learned a lot, but without knowing Krishna, they'll never learn more. So the devotee already has the capacity to learn everything you could ever want to know about this material energy, down to the finest detail. But unless you have faith in it, you'll never look there. You just won't look there. You'll always be looking in these other places. Like that. So that will be, so it's just conditioning. This is the way we're used to it. It's a problem, throw it out. That's your pessimism, right? Idealism is, I do this, I do nice, it's great, and oh yes, everything's wonderful, it's a spiritual world, nothing will ever happen here, then something goes wrong. How did that happen? How is that possible? Where was Krishna? So what does that sound like? That sounds just like the Jewish rabbi who became an atheist because his son died at 12. Same philosophy, because they don't actually see how Krishna is in control. What happens to us is exactly according to what we've desired, right? And we say, no, I didn't want my son to die, but then if you steal means you want to go to jail. So if you steal now and then later you go to jail, then you say, I don't want this going to jail part, but if you didn't want to go to jail, why'd you steal? They go together, so we don't want to take responsibility. It has to be someone else's fault. Right? That's why we love committees, right? Because a committee is never responsible. Right? An individual you can nail, but a committee you can't. And each person can, if they once say, I don't remember saying that, or they can say, well, I didn't vote for it, I abstained. All kinds of things you can say. And so you can never get anything done with a committee. There's no organization in the world that's successful that the top is a committee. There's always people. Right? Kshatriya has a committee, has his ministers, but he makes the decision, and he gets the glory or the blame. But this idea of that committees come from lack of trust. We don't accept authority. We don't accept that there is such a thing as authority. And so therefore we're tiptoeing around how to get around authority, gurus being authority, temple presidents being authority, parents being authority, all these things being authority, that we try to create a system that works without authority. And that's called a committee. Right? So for the faithless let's not say fully faithless, but for the person who doesn't have much faith in authority, therefore, since Vedas are authority, doesn't have much faith in them. The basic philosophy of Krishna consciousness, yes, philosophical, but the cultural or the religious part, that's another thing, because that means then that's actual relationship. And lack of respect of authority or faith in authority means a relationship problem. So basically the modern culture cultivates relationship problem. That's why there's such a, how you could say, a differentiation, what do you call it? I mean, a complete difference between two things. A distinction between the first world, and the so-called international, and the rest of the world. Because the rest of the world accepts relationships and can't understand what the gringos are talking about, So the Western culture can't understand why these people are so worried about, family and community and this and that. It'd be so much more practical to put all that to the side. Right? So yes, practically for making money and moving things forward for an observable result, then the Western system is in that way better. But if your results are meant for use in relationships and that, then they've failed 101%. Because relationships is one thing you can say that the Westerners don't have as part of their philosophy. While the rest of the world, that's all they work for. They'll lose everything for the family, for their relationships, for their friends. That Westerners will never do that. I think, why would you do that? That's why the Westerners designed this hat thing, right? Because I'm wearing my hat, so my best friend, I can yell and scream and tell him what an idiot he is and that, and then I'll say, well, I was just wearing my management hat. Like that. But, in the third world, they would have to consider he is my friend, so therefore I should tell him what I think, but I have to tell him in a way that may be more difficult and is not as pragmatic. It may take me 10 minutes to tell him, or it may take weeks or months or years, while the other way I can just say it. Of course, it destroys the relationship, but hey, that's his problem. Like that. So these things are, you understand? So they're based on the same principle of just lack of respect of authority. And so from that, then these other aspects come up. So it's what we've been doing since time immemorial. So that's why Kapila Muni is making the point here, is that you don't judge the devotee by their conditioned nature. You judge how they can be engaged or what particular service would be ideal for them. But their position to be involved in the devotional activities, their position to be a devotee and all those things, that is not, it's not a consideration. So the eternal damnation is not part of, it's not part of Vaishnavism. Like that. It's just not. I was, just as a side thing, I was even hearing yesterday, one devotee was saying that he was talking to some monks, Christian monks, the monastery wallas. And so that monk was saying that actually there's a different teaching for the common people and for the monks. The monks know about reincarnation, this and that, but they never teach it to the common people because it's considered they can't understand it. So what the monks are taught about and what the commons, but he says, but if you have a dialogue between a monk of one order and another, or one religion and another, he says they're very common ground. But if you, between a monk and even someone of their own religion, but is not a monk, is very different. So it's interesting to note that even there is that our concept of these general things are coming from the general. You know, it's not even the specifics that in, you know. Like that. Okay, so I guess we should... yeah, just one question. Is Varnashram system limited to the material world? Is also applicable in the spiritual planets? It's also applied there. That's where the culture comes from. But there, it's a medium for expressing one's love for Krishna, right? Vaikuntha Kshatriyas and that mood like that, Dwarka Kshatriyas. So through that flavor, then that's there. In Mathura it'll be mixed. It'll be a lot more of the flavor of moods in that. Those are Kshatriya based, but Vrindavan will be a Vaishya based. But that pure, unalloyed love is the main thing. In the material world, it's used as a form to see that just the society will run nicely, but its purpose is the same, to get to the same Vaikuntha understanding or same Vaikuntha mood. So we use the form so that we can develop actually that spontaneous love for Krishna. That's its purpose here. So Varnashram, like anything else, it's meant for developing spontaneous loving devotion to the Lord. It's not something, it's not economics or this or that. Those are side points. So end here, like that. No, we're over time. So if there's anyone has more questions, we can continue after 5 minutes. Okay, Sahil. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki, Jainatai Gaura Premanandi.